All right, so I got some pretty wild clips here for you guys. Over the last couple of days, I've seen some U.S. media outlets and journalists who have been much more confrontational in terms of their approach towards Israeli representatives and U.S. State Department representatives. So I got a couple different clips. We got Jake Tapper on CNN. We got Saeed over here pressing a member of the U.S. State Department, and a couple others that we're going to get to here in a minute. But first, I just want to show you guys the latest numbers that we've gotten out of Gaza. Now, keep in mind, I used to rely on the Gaza Health Ministry numbers. Now, over the last couple of weeks, we have not been able to rely on those numbers because a majority of the hospitals within inside Gaza are no longer functioning, okay? A majority of them have been essentially deemed inoperable at this point, okay? And so we are no longer able to get those numbers because the Gaza Health Ministry bases their numbers on how many people are coming through their hospital network, right? So we always knew that their numbers were sort of an undercount because they don't count the amount of people who are stuck underneath the rubble. But here we have Euromed Human Rights Monitor, who I think is giving us a pretty accurate perspective in terms of what is actually happening on the ground. So their latest numbers are these: 21,022 killed, 8,300 of them being children, almost 4,300 of them being women, and 19,660 of them being civilians. So I want you guys to focus in on this ratio here, right? 21,000 killed, 19,660 of them being civilians. So we are dealing with roughly a ratio here of like 19 to 1 of civilians killed to militants killed, based on their estimates, 19 to 1. So keep that in the back of your mind. It's going to come into play in one of these later clips that we're going to watch. They also say there have been 37,000 or more injuries. 76 journalists have been killed. Almost 1.8 million have been displaced out of a population that is only like 2.2, 2.3 million people in totality. So we're talking about a vast, vast majority of the population in Gaza has been forcibly, violently displaced at this point. We have 60,000 units that have been completely destroyed. This is talking about housing units. And 167,000 of them have been partially destroyed. So this accounts for a majority of the entirety of the housing stock within inside Gaza has been either partially or completely destroyed at this point. Okay, 144 press headquarters have been destroyed or damaged. 262 schools have been damaged. Over 1,100 industrial facilities, 95 mosques and 3 churches, 455 targeted health staff, as well as 126 health facilities that have been damaged or destroyed. Okay, remember when everybody was arguing for like a week about whether or not it was Israel or Hamas or the PIJ that damaged the Al-Ali hospital inside of Gaza? We argued about that for like a week. Since then, they targeted 126 other health facilities within inside Gaza. So now I want to go ahead and jump into this Jake Tapper clip. So this is basically the context of this is that CNN had one of their producers, right, lose a bunch of family members, 9 different family members within Gaza as a result of Israeli airstrikes. And so he's going to press this Israeli representative on that and whether or not Israel is going far enough in terms of protecting civilians inside of Gaza. So let's go ahead and watch this clip here.
Seeing that the IDF really has done everything that is humanly possible to try to safeguard innocent civilians.
It's very hard to believe that, especially on a day when one of our producers lost 9 members of his family who were not members of Hamas, not members of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, not members of any group, just 9 people just trying to live their lives.
First of all, I extend my sorrow to him and my sympathies. But if I saw your report correctly, and please correct me if I say something wrong, that happened in northern Gaza, in Gaza City, where a month ago we already asked all the civilians to leave. And most of them did. If there was like 1,200,000 people there was only a couple of tens of thousands left. And one has to ask, yes, they had ample opportunity to leave. I don't know what happened. I don't have the specific circumstances. I know there's deadly combat going on now in the north, still between these IDF and Hamas terrorists, yes? And we don't want to see anyone caught up in the crossfire, but why didn't they heed the advice and leave the area?
You can't blame them. There's now
I don't blame them.
But you can't. There's fighting in the south now. I've been asking this since October 7th. Where are these people supposed to go?
Okay, so to answer Jake Tapper's question there at the end, where are they supposed to go? They're supposed to die. I mean, that's essentially the position of Israel. There's nowhere that is a truly safe space within inside Gaza, okay? As he pointed out there accurately, okay? Oh, you told everybody to flee from the south and go, or to flee from the north and go to the south, right? Okay, you've been bombing in the south. So what are we really talking about here? Oh, now we're saying we need you to go to this specific section, this tiny couple square kilometer portion of Gaza in the south, and that'll be the new safe zone. I mean, it's just completely absurd. Look at how casually this man just said, oh, well, there were 1.2 million people living in the north of Gaza, and we told them to flee. Why didn't all of them flee? Well, it must be his fault for his family being killed, because they weren't supposed to be in the north of Gaza. Imagine the audacity of feeling as though you have the ability, that you have the right to tell over 1 million human beings to flee their homes, to flee the northern strip of Gaza. Keep in mind, Gaza was already, before this offensive, one of the most densely populated places on the face of the planet, and you're telling over 1 million people to flee to a different portion of Gaza that you are also bombing, and then you turn around, and when even one of CNN's own employees are losing 9 family members, you turn around and you basically imply, oh, well, it must have been their fault. Why didn't they listen to us? Well, maybe because nothing that you have said has been honest up until this point. Maybe because there is no place within Gaza that is actually safe for these people to go. I mean, it's just completely grotesque at every single level that you want to look at it. And so now I want to move on to this clip here, where we have again here, Saeed Erekat, who is one of the best questioners inside of the State Department in these press briefings that I've seen. He's been doing this for decades, and he always has the best pushback on some of these State Department ghouls. So I want to go ahead and listen to some of what he said here. So I think this is Matthew Miller here of the State Department. So let's go ahead and watch this clip.
Yeah, Saeed, go ahead.
So I understand you correctly. You're saying that the killing of 700 Palestinians over a period of 24.
Saeed, I always like when I use my own words, not when you try to put words in my mouth.
I want to understand what you said properly. You said that we have seen improvement. I'm asking you directly. You think that the killing of 700 people in 24-hour period is an improvement? So I'm just asking you to say yes or no.
I don't
in accordance to what you said.
So Saeed, I don't think you were listening very closely to what I said.
I was listening very closely.
Well, clearly not, because
word.
What I said is we have seen improvement in their plans for Khan Yunis, their plans for the South. We have seen them evacuate specific neighborhoods rather than entire areas. So the numbers of displaced persons will hopefully be lower in southern Gaza than it was in the north. But when it comes to results, we are going to monitor it very closely. And I think I was pretty clear about that. And I think the Secretary was pretty clear about that on Thursday.
Give us a picture.
I just want to say, 1.8 million people displaced so far out of a population of 2.3 million, okay? Over 70% of the population of Gaza has been internally, forcefully, violently displaced. And he's saying, oh, well, we think that maybe Israel is going to have some improvements in terms of this forced, violent displacement going forward. It seems like maybe you've already crossed the threshold in terms of this being an ethnic cleansing and a genocidal campaign and being totally criminal and unacceptable. You've already passed that threshold. But he's turning around and he has the audacity to say, oh, well, we hope that they're going to improve it going forward. Oh, now they're telling neighborhoods to evacuate instead of entire regions of the Gaza Strip. I mean, just so ridiculous at face value.
What would be acceptable? What would be acceptable? Because you talked about...
Saeed, we mourn the loss of every civilian life. We don't want to see any civilians killed in this.
What have you done to really minimize that? Remember, Gaza is the size of Washington, D.C. When you tell people to move, like now, and they have nowhere to go, they're striking in Khan Yunis. They're saying, actually, we're hitting every place in Gaza. You know, so where should people go?
People should go.
Be the end?
Saeed, let's take it one question at a time. Before you asked a question, let me answer.
Sure.
People should go to the UN designated sites that are on Israeli lists as deconfliction zones that should not be the target of military campaigns. There are already people who are sheltering in those. As the campaign moves to the south and Israel evacuates specific neighborhoods or orders specific neighborhoods to be evacuated, that is where people should go.
Okay, but we know that they bombed UN facilities and so on. Let me ask you a couple of other questions.
Okay, so exactly as he just said there at the end, and I'll link down below a couple of the other clips that he posted, but exactly what he just said there at the end, right? This motherfucker has the audacity to come out here and say, oh, well, they should just go to the UN designated sites, right? Or the sites that Israel has designated as safe zones. They've also bombed UN shelters, okay? That is not a safe zone. Now, I'm going to show you guys this here in a minute, okay, of exactly the breakdown on the map of where Israel is asking people to go, okay, and how absolutely absurd it is at face value. But first, I just want to finish off with another clip from the same guy here, Saeed. in terms of his pushback on where people should go, and then, this U.S. official saying, oh, they should go to the UN designated sites, and then a direct testimony here, side by side, with a UN official who is on the ground, who is going to directly contradict what this U.S. official was just saying there. So let's go ahead and watch this.
So where should people go?
People
what
should go.
Be the end?
So, let's take it one question at a time. Before you asked a question, let me answer.
Sure.
People should go to the UN designated sites that are on Israeli lists as deconfliction zones that should not be the target of military campaigns.
There is nowhere safe. This place is not safe. Under that table is not safe. Children in that hospital is not safe. There are no bunkers here that would offer a modicum of safety. It doesn't exist.
Okay, so there you go. You have directly from UNICEF, okay, which Israel would like to call, an arm of Hamas, essentially, right? Because I've seen Israeli officials, I'm not even kidding, they've called it UN officials Hamas. They've said the UN in general is Hamas. They've said the World Health Organization, they're Hamas. Anybody who criticizes Israel is Hamas, apparently. You are Hamas, I am Hamas, everybody is Hamas, according to Israel, right? And so I wanted to touch on this here before we get to the next clip. This is from that 972 magazine, which I'm going to link this down below. I highly recommend everybody goes and reads the entirety of this. This gives you a perspective in terms of how what Israel is doing right now is verifiably genocidal. There are no two ways about it. They have sources from within the Israeli military, within the Israeli government, who outline this in explicit detail. This is the same report that I was referencing when I was talking about the AI, the artificial intelligence, mass assassination factory, as they were calling it. That's not my words, that's their words. And this report basically lays out exactly how Israel is intentionally targeting civilians, okay? No two ways about it. This is terrorism, as pure of a definition as you could possibly give for that kind of a word. So here's just one paragraph that I want to mention. They say here, the bombing of power targets, according to the intelligence sources who they spoke with, who had first-hand experience with its application in Gaza in the past, is mainly intended to harm Palestinian civil society, civilians, to, quote, create a shock that, among other things, will reverberate powerfully and, quote, lead civilians to put pressure on Hamas, okay? So here you have an admission that when Israel targets a house, when Israel targets a UN shelter, a refugee camp, a hospital, whatever the case may be, that the goal is, quote, to create a shock that will lead civilians to put pressure on Hamas. This is terrorism. This is the textbook definition of terrorism, right? You are intentionally targeting civilians, and there are other portions in this article where they explicitly lay out that Israel's military is so advanced, their intelligence is so advanced, that they know if we level this apartment building, this is how many civilians are going to die, right? They make it even more explicit than that. They say when a 5-year-old child, right, dies in one of these bombings, Israel knew beforehand exactly who and what was going to, be destroyed in that bombing campaign. But when they say this, what they're saying is we are going to intentionally bomb civilian targets so that those civilians within inside Gaza turn against Hamas, and that will help us in our military campaign. This is terror bombing. That is exactly what this is. Okay? So the idea, as pushed here by the State Department ghoul, oh, you need to go to these safe sites. There's no fucking safe sites. Okay? Keep in mind, I covered just a couple of days ago on this channel the reports that we got that the U.S. government, the U.S. military, was sending the locations of different aid organizations who are not Hamas, who are not PIJ, who are not militants, who are not terrorists in any way, shape, or form. The U.S. sent those coordinates, they sent the location of these aid organizations to the Israeli military, and what did Israel turn around and do? They turned around and they bombed those aid organizations. So the idea that this isn't intentional, the idea that they're purely going after Hamas militants is patently absurd. And even if you were in specific instances, right, Israel, I want you guys to understand the logic here, right? Israel uses the logic that if there is some low-ranking, rank-and-file member of Hamas, okay, who has no power institutionally within Hamas whatsoever, okay, they weren't involved in the planning of October 7th or anything like that. They're just some random Hamas militant. Israel weighs the calculation and they say it is worth it for us to go in and to completely level an entire apartment block in order to get one of these Hamas militants who is sleeping at home with his family, okay? To kill the entire family, to destroy the surrounding homes and the innocent people who are living within this apartment building. That is the kind of logic that they use, okay? So this isn't them targeting Hamas and then, oh, Hamas threw these civilians in front of them and so they got killed. That's not what's happening on the ground. What's happening on the ground is you have explicitly what Israel said from the beginning of this bombing campaign, that they are going for destruction, not precision. Those were the words of Israeli military officials. Destruction, not precision. Okay? This is terror bombing. That is exactly what this is. And you still have U.S. State Department ghouls. You still have the Biden administration. You have all of these motherfuckers who still are coming out and insisting, oh, they're doing everything they possibly can to avoid killing civilians. Not only are they not doing everything they can to avoid killing civilians, they are intentionally going out of their way to kill civilians. Okay, it's the complete inverse. It's the complete opposite of what they are trying to claim here. And so I want to move on to this shot that I saw from Sky News here. It's an Israeli ambassador who claimed that this place, Mawasi, is a safe haven in Gaza. That's where everybody should go. All of these civilians flee to this area, right? Let's go ahead and watch this clip here, just about 30 seconds.
There is a river, there is a place in Gaza called the Mawasi. The Mawasi is the place where they all can have shelters. Together with international organizations, we created shelters for the Palestinian people. So you cannot say Israel is not, facilitating that. Together with humanitarian aid.
This is where she's talking about. A desolate wasteland of sand dunes next to the Mediterranean Sea. There is no aid in Al-Mawasi. There are no aid agency tents. There are no food kitchens. There is no help here.
So this is what they're talking about, okay? And there were recent reports that came out, I didn't get to cover it on this channel, but Israel is literally using maps where they have like sectioned off different zones within Gaza, right? This is area 246, this is area 86, whatever the case may be, where they're deciding where they're going to strike, where they're going to tell people to flee to. So I want to show you guys on a map here real quick what area they're talking about, okay? So first off, right, we have Gaza City up here, the most densely populated place where most of the people live, okay? You have the northern portion of Gaza right here that has been essentially completely flattened to the ground at this point. Now keep in mind, during the first portion of this invasion, during this bombing campaign, they told the Gazans to flee south of Wadi Gaza, right? So this would be the southern portion of the Gaza Strip here. So they told initially everybody, flee the south, go to the south, or flee the north, go to the south, you'll be safe there, right? So they raised this to the ground to the point where Gaza City is completely unrecognizable. It is unlivable at this point, the entirety of the northern strip of Gaza. So a bunch of people, hundreds of thousands of people fled to the south. Now you have this focusing here on what it looks like is the next most densely populated place in the south of Gaza here, which is Khan Yunis. This is where Israel is ramping up their next offensive here. Down here you have Egypt and you have the Rafah crossing. They've told some people to flee there as well. But I want to show you guys this next map. This is what she was just referencing there, of Al-Mawasi. This is the area that she's talking about. It's literally like a couple of square miles that they're saying all 2.2, 2.3 million people in Gaza should be forced into. I don't even know if that's physically possible, number one, and it certainly is not logistically possible. There are no supplies here. There is no adequate, reliable access to food or clean water here, okay? There is nothing here, as they just showed in that clip there on Sky News. There's nothing here for these people, right? 2.5 square miles. 2.5 square miles for over 2 million people. This is what Israel is using to justify slaughtering every other Palestinian who is in any area that is not this densely compacted region right here. And I guarantee you in a couple of weeks they're going to say, oh no, Hamas moved their headquarters over here to Al-Mawasi. Oh, now we have to go over here, so you guys have to move, I don't know, maybe go to Egypt or maybe go into the ocean, right? That's what they're going to say. So, I mean, the idea that, like, oh, well, Israel's the most moral military in the world, and they're giving Palestinians warnings, and they're telling Palestinians to flee to certain areas so that they'll be safe because we really don't want to kill civilians. Bullshit. Absolute bullshit. And so now I want to move on to this interview as well. Now, this one is just a straight-up lie here on CNN, where one of these Israeli army spokespeople, Jonathan Kornrikis, okay, this guy's been all over the media since this offensive began, and he just straight up, I'm not even going to play this clip. I'm just going to read this main quote here because it's just so stupid. We don't even need to waste our time on it. He said, quote, the ratio of killing 2 civilians in Gaza for every armed member of Hamas is considered highly positive. Highly positive. And this proportion is perhaps unique in the world. First off, no, it's not. No, it's not. That's not unique. That's not good. That's not a good thing. Even if you were killing 2 to 1 Hamas members, 2 civilians. First of all, that wouldn't be good. But second of all, that's not what's happening. I mean, we just looked at the statistics at the top of the video. 21,000 killed, 19,660 of them are civilians. So I would like to know, where the fuck are you getting this number from? Just pulling it straight out of your ass? 2 to 1. 2 to 1 is a ratio I haven't seen literally anywhere. I mean, you could check numerous different sources, including even some of the IDF sources that I've seen. They estimated, a week ago or so, oh, we've killed 1,000 to 2,000 Hamas militants. And even by their own estimate, oh, we've killed about 20,000 or so civilians, or 20,000 total, right? Even by that ratio, it wouldn't be accurate. I mean, this is just like, he's just making this up and just pushing this lie on a mainstream news outlet like CNN. And we're going to finish off this with this here, okay? So obviously, I mean, credit to some of these guys, right? Credit to Jake Tapper for having a little bit of a backbone and pushing back against this when one of his own colleagues lost all of these family members. Credit to Saeed for consistently being one of the best journalists within the entirety of who gets to go and question these State Department ghouls. Credit to some of these outlets like 972 Magazine did a great report. Again, I highly recommend everybody goes and reads that. Credit to some of these people, right? Especially this Sky News report, where they straight up in the middle of the broadcast, just cut to, an image of what it actually looks like in the region. This is how journalism is done, right? Don't just take these motherfuckers at face value. This Israeli ambassador. Show what it looks like on the ground. Contradict them when what they're saying is contradictory to reality. Credit to some of these journalists here, right? But I do want to finish off this with this here. So this was a statement that was written, and I didn't get to cover this on the channel at the time, but a couple of days ago, there was a shooting that happened in Vermont where 3 Palestinians in the United States of America were shot at by somebody, right? Some racist motherfucker, whatever the case may be. And they were wearing keffiyehs and all of that, and so, I guess he decided that, he wanted to shoot them. And so this was one of the people who got shot. And the thing that he wrote here was so, moving to me, deeply moving to me, as maybe corny as that sounds, but I just wanted to read it to you guys here. So his name is Hisham Awartani, okay? And he said this is not about Hisham Awartani. It was never about me. On November 15th, I joined my fellow Brown students to write the names of thousands of Palestinians killed in the war on Gaza. They gave us a document issued by the Gaza Health Ministry, and out of curiosity, the first thing I did was look up my name. There were 30 results. 13 people who were named Hisham, and 17 with Hisham as a middle name. I didn't know how to feel. My name was not a common one. The list was incomplete, and only included around 6,500 names, while an estimated 11,000 had been killed by Israel, or according to American media, had died. Had I been one of those Hishams in Gaza, my picture would not have been on the BBC or CNN. Instead of being interviewed, my mother would be fleeing south or already killed, trapped under the rubble with me. I am the Hisham that you know. I lived. My story is being told. The 13 other Hishams were killed. Their stories forever erased. They were human, and they did not have to prove that to anyone. They knew no respite, no justice, and no peace. So, this is part of the struggle of covering things like this, is that you read the numbers like we did at the top of this video, right? From Euromed Human Rights Monitor. You read the numbers. 20,000 killed is not something I can personally put in perspective for you guys. It's not something I can even personally understand. 20,000 people killed, 19,660 of them being civilians. This is an unimaginable level of death and destruction that I've never witnessed in the entirety of my lifetime. Now, if I go and I check my Twitter DMs right now, or if I go and I check my Twitter feed right now, I guarantee you, based on what I've been seeing over the last number of days, that I could not show you what I've been seeing on YouTube. It would break the terms of service that they have, right? The amount of children that I have seen who have been blown to pieces, or who have been traumatized, seeing their family members blown to pieces around them. It is incomprehensible, okay? And so I want to continue to cover this as deeply as I can. I want to talk about this as much as I possibly can. And I know that this has taken up a huge portion of my channel since October 7th, but this is an issue that matters to me. It matters to a lot of people. And I don't want it to get lost in the weeds when we're talking about the images that we see out of Gaza, when we're talking about the numbers that we're seeing out of Gaza, or, you know, seeing some of the housing being flattened to the ground, or whatever the case may be, or watching these interviews of different ghouls from the State Department or the Israeli, you know, representatives, or whatever the case may be. I don't want to get it lost that these are real people, you know? Like, in a different world, this could be my sister, this could be my mother, this could be my friend, okay? And I do think about that. And I do take that into consideration when I'm covering stories like this. And, you know, I mean, it's an incredibly depressing and horrific situation right now that, for me personally, I mean, I'm 24 years old, and I've never seen something like this in my lifetime. The Iraq War, the Afghanistan War, that happened when I was much younger. I didn't get to see a lot of the, you know, the catastrophic, the you know, horrific nature of that up close, and actually seeing it on video and everything like that. This is the worst thing that I have ever seen in the entirety of my lifetime. And it's not just something that's happening in some far off country where we have no connection to it. This is something that is happening with U.S. weapons. This is something that is happening with U.S. taxpayer dollars. This is something that our government, Democrats, Republicans, are overwhelmingly, firmly standing behind right now. And so I think we as Americans have a responsibility to use our voices, to go to protests, to call your member of Congress, to withhold your vote, whatever, donate to a charity, whatever semblance, whatever modicum of pressure that you can put, you know, to try to end this carnage, I think is going to be beneficial. And so that's why I feel the need to continue talking about this kind of stuff. So I'll leave you guys off with that. You know, I'll have more videos probably today or over the next couple of days. And yeah, I mean, I just hope that the pressure is enough soon.
Everyone is saying good politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me. Everyone is saying